Good to be here with you on the first Tuesday of May. In fact, somebody told me it was Cinco de Mayo. And I'm tickled to be with you here on that holiday. Holiday in Mexico. So let's go ahead and begin with the first question that was sent in by a reader or by a viewer, I think actually week before last, as I remember, and we didn't quite get to it last week. My husband and I have been practicing real love for some time now, and it's been getting better and better. Everything was great until I made a request today that while he was watching television, which he often does during the day and several hours each night, I suggested that he consider wearing earphones. And I did this on the phone. I was out of town, and so I just suggested that he wearing earphones because I really don't watch TV much, and it disturbs my peace and quiet. The peace and quiet that I like in the house. He bristled when I mentioned it, so I said, look, no big deal, just something to consider. Whatever you decide is fine. And then I talked about the shows that I was looking forward to watching with him when I returned and we were together. So, first, your reaction and even the way you brought it up was great. You just sort of let it go and you said, look, no big deal, it's just a suggestion. But it would be useful for you to understand why he bristled. So let me explain his reaction. He watches television a lot, so it's likely that he really enjoys the experience. And you're asking him to modify it. This is something that's like, a really important thing to him. It's a big deal to him. Now, it may seem small to you, but to him it's not. So to him it's like saying, I'm inconvenienced by you, so would you completely alter your experience, which is important to you, to make my life more pleasant or more convenient? That's not a little thing to him. So let me give you a couple scenarios that might make it easier for you to understand. Let's say that we're eating together, you and I. And somehow I'm bothered by the way that, say, your mouth moves. And by the way that maybe your eye twitches when you chew. And so I say, look, it's just a request, just like you did with him. But each time you put your food in your mouth, each time you put a bite in your mouth, would you mind just turning your chair around and facing the wall while you chew? You can still chew and eat, but I just can't stand looking at you while you're chewing. It bothers me. Now, do you get the point? I'm just making a request, but it would significantly alter your eating experience. Or another example. Let's say that you like to hum or sing, and you really enjoy doing that. It just lights you up. And let's say that you're doing that while you're working in the kitchen. So when I come into the kitchen, I ask you I say to you, well, I don't mind if you hum or sing, but would you mind wearing, say, a motorcycle helmet on your head with the visor down while you hum so that I don't have to hear you hum? So notice, it's very similar to what you're asking him to do. Now, I'm exaggerating a little bit, obviously, but it gives you a picture of what you're asking him to do. You're saying, you can continue to watch television, but you're really asking him to alter his experience. Now, could he still do that? If he were loving, could he still put the headphones on and grant your request? Yes, he could. It turns out, for example, that sometimes when I'm at home, during work hours, I will work out on a stationary bike and watch television while I'm on a stationary bike because I find exercising to be just intolerably boring. And I'll watch like a movie while I'm on a stationary bike during the daytime, and because while I'm on a bike, it's kind of noisy. And so in order to be able to hear what I'm doing, I'll put the headphone, I would have to turn the television up pretty loud. Well, that would be annoying to the people who are around me. the people who are working, Donna especially. And so I put the headphones on so that I don't annoy her. Now, I don't like having headphones on while I'm exercising, but I do that because I don't want to irritate her. She's never asked me to do that, but I do it so I don't disturb her and anybody else that might be in the house. So it can be done. It does affect my experience, but what I choose to do has really nothing to do with what he chooses to do, because it may be that having headphones on is 5 times more annoying to him than it is to me. I'm just pointing out that your request is not unreasonable, just that it is a bigger deal to him than it would be to you. Then you continue. Tonight, when he called, he said that he'd been up, because he's out of town, he said he'd been upset all day since I'd asked him. He started in on all the reasons why it was a terrible idea. Like, have you ever worn those things? You're totally isolated from everything when you're wearing them, and it's my house. I can't even enjoy my wonderful sound system, and so on. And, he has a good point, like I said, with all of those things. He really would hate wearing them. But he really heard it as I didn't want to be with him because I like the house quiet. And I know he heard it as a demand that he had no choice about, even though I honestly didn't present it that way. And I really will adapt lovingly to whatever he decides to do, which means that if he chooses not to wear the headphones, then I will wear my earphones with my music or go in the other room, which I already do. But honestly, I really do hate the noise. And in our house, there's no getting away from the noise when he has the television on. So, what can you do? So now, you just calmly explain to him that this is an opportunity for the two of you simply to unconditionally offer what you're willing to offer. You've made a request. Now, he gets to either say he will do a thing or he will not do a thing. He is not obligated to do anything. It was just a request. If he chooses not to wear headphones, you go back to what you had before. So you really are handling this pretty well, especially since his choice to, if he chooses, in fact, to watch television without the headphones, does really interfere with your ability to enjoy quiet in the house. There are many things that people do that really do interfere with our ability to do what we want to do. The minute he turns on the television, the noise goes everywhere, and it does affect you. So it really is a kindness on your part to then, for you to wear headphones or earphones and listen to music or to go into another room. And so you might say to him, look, it's just a choice. You're making a choice to listen to the television without headphones. I'm then making a choice to go into the other room or listen to music. I'm not upset about it. So why should you continue to be upset about it? We're making unconditional choices to be loving to each other, to choose what we wish to do. There's nothing to be upset about. You might even, for example, show him this video chat and say, it's just about choices. Give him another guy's perspective, mine. And just show him it's just a choice. And let him know that you did not understand the magnitude of the request that you're making. But to keep dwelling on it like he's doing, to keep fussing about it, is just ruining his own happiness. Say, you're right, I didn't understand what I was asking. Now I do, and all you have to do is say no. Or, if you wish, you could try the headphones occasionally and see if you hate it as much as you thought. If you want to. But you don't even have to do that. It's your choice, sweetie. Whatever you choose to do, though, I'm not going to sit around and sulk about it. So, what's there to be upset about? Then you continued. I realized I had some fear about his reaction, my old stuff, which is I shouldn't ask for what I want because it ruins everything. I said again, it was just a thought. I'm totally good with whatever you decide. And as he kept pushing and complaining, that I would even suggest such a thing. I did say, when you go down this road, it is not a happy place for us. Brilliant. I really wanted to stop the momentum, so I just said, look, I love you a lot, and let's talk tomorrow. And that was the end of the phone call. So again, you just keep emphasizing that you love him, you're not upset about the request. That's the end of it. And then just drop it. And then if he chooses to be upset about it, that's his choice. And then don't you tiptoe around him. Don't avoid him because he's upset. Then you go out of your way to be kind to him, you touch him, you be loving toward him. But if he wants to sulk, he can sulk on his own. But don't play into his sulking. Don't treat him sulking. Don't treat him differently just because he is. Here's a viewer who says, here's a thought for you. Sometimes I think the peace that I have from being by myself comes from running from all the people on the field of death. They're all drowning, and I know I can't fix them, so I just let them drown. But hanging out with a bunch of running people is no fun. I do it, but I mostly sit and listen. Even then, I begin to tune them out because all I hear from drowning people is blah, 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 this person did this, and blah, blah, if only blah, blah, blah. I can almost understand why the wise man in your story was a hermit that lived on top of a mountain. I struggle with engaging with all of these drowning people. Any suggestions? Well, you don't have to engage with drowning people. If you find that people are tiring or exhausting or nerve-wracking or frustrating, well then leave them alone. If you find their stories boring or annoying or wearying, then go do something else. You're not obligated to save drowning people. Now, this is an important thing. Simply understanding that you're not obligated to do anything for drowning people sometimes gives you a sense of freedom so that you can simply be around them and listen to them, observe them. Sometimes when we're around drowning people and they go blah, 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 we feel frustrated because we feel like we're supposed to do something. We're supposed to say the right thing. No, not really. I got an email from a lady today who yesterday I had spent a good deal of time with on the phone, and I just listened to her and just loved her as she told me a story about some really painful events in her life. I just listened mostly and loved her. I said a few things, but she wrote to say, oh, it was such a delight just to feel heard and loved. Whereas for, it's been years now, she's been struggling with an issue, and anybody she's talked to has felt like they had to fix her or tell her what to do or tell her what's wrong with her, tell her how she should change. She just needed to feel loved. She'll figure out the answer, and actually she already has begun to. As you're listening to these people go blah, 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 sometimes you don't really need to do anything. Now that's one suggestion. The other is, you don't always even have to be around them. Sometimes you can just be by yourself. But on the other hand, eventually it's not just about being loved. Eventually, if we just avoid people who are drowning, it becomes kind of an elitist, lonely thing. Eventually, if we have real love in our lives, we can't be happy, truly happy, unless we share it with people. And as people say what sounds like blah, 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 they're really asking for help. And that doesn't mean that we have to read sections of the Real Love book to them, but as people are describing events in their lives, there are so many ways that we can say loving and teaching things in very unobtrusive ways that won't frighten them or lecture them, where we can impart seeds of wisdom that will sprout who knows when. Maybe immediately, maybe a week later, maybe a year later. But on many occasions people have said to me, gosh, there was something you said to me, they've said, that didn't even ring in my heart until weeks or months later. So like when somebody's telling you, oh, this and this difficulty in my life, and on and on and on, sometimes you can interject with it just a kind word and say, it's been my experience in my life, when I've had an experience like that I've just not really told the truth about myself, that I had more responsibility in that situation than I realized. That I was, and then you can name some behavior, depends on what the situation is, that I wasn't taking responsibility for my choices, that I wasn't being sufficiently honest, that I was running from the responsibility, that I was being angry, the situation will vary from moment to moment, but you can teach them something about honesty, selfishness, being loving, something in just a sentence or two. People are always describing their emptiness and fear. They're doing it all the time. And we can interject just a sentence or two. If they want to hear more, they'll let us know. They'll say, what do you mean by that? And now you can say more. If they don't, they'll move right on and ignore you. That's easy to understand. I mean, if somebody's ignoring you, it's pretty obvious. Then you just step back and you let them go on. Now, does that mean you let them go on and on and on, blah, blah, blah? No. Then if you get tired, you excuse yourself and you leave. Easy. Excuse me, I have to go water the lawn. I have to get up and go get a Coke. Come on, simple. But after a while, we really do need to be around people who are drowning. We need to offer what we have, or we're being self-centered. Just a thought. Here's a viewer who says, I feel frustration in my home with the way my husband has not worked outside the home for 5 years and continues to make promises. And then he has not followed through on what he's committed to do. He also doesn't do what he promises around the house, and the house is deteriorating because he hasn't done what he's supposed to do. I feel like I'm stuck in a mess. So if you've got a partner who isn't working around the house, isn't doing what he's supposed to be doing, I'm guessing, well, it's not a guess really because you say it, you feel frustrated. And one of the elements of, well, there are several elements of the word frustrated. One is fear, but the other prominent element is anger. So you're angry at this man, and he feels it. And so rather than have an open, honest, loving conversation with this man, your anger probably comes out at him directly, sideways, diagonally, tangentially. He probably feels little darts and arrows and slings coming at him all the time. And so there's not a loving, clear communication going on between the two of you. And, often then people who are in a situation like that will react by sometimes even intentionally not doing their jobs. So he'll do it just to get you back. Pretty ugly, but there you are. Is there a way out of this? Sure. I mean, he needs to feel loved just like everybody else does. So what he needs is to feel accepted by you. You might even say to him, look, I've been irritated at you about a lot of things for a long time, and I need to quit that. This is not working. So what I'd like to do is change the pattern of our communication. I would like to sit with you, and I would like to talk about where we're going, what we're doing, how we can improve our relationship, how we can improve lots of things, how we can improve the way we talk, how we can improve how things are done around the house, how we can improve our job situation, yours, how we can improve lots of things. And the only way for us to do that is to talk about it. And then the two of you meet on a regular basis, and you tell him that you're going to do this. So you tell him, Look, first you offer. How often would you like to meet? Now remember, you first told him that you've been wrong. You say, I've been angry, I've been a witch, I haven't been accepting. He's going to love to hear that. That's going to open up the conversation and make him feel safe. And then you say, and now we've got to have more open dialogue about what now needs to happen, which is going to involve, accountability. You're going to be kind, but accountability involves telling the truth. And so there are simple things that need to be done, and you have to write them down. If something isn't written down, it isn't going to happen. So you need to write down things like, here are bills that need to be paid, who's going to do that, and who's going to do it by what day of the month. How is it going to be done? It needs to be exact. Here are things around the house that need to be done. You need to come up with an exact list. And you don't just shove a list in his face. You go over each item. So the eaves on the house, the wood needs to be replaced by Thursday, May 16th. It has to be very specific or people get overwhelmed. You give him a list of 35 things and say, here, do this. And what he's going to do is go watch television. So each item, you need to agree with him, date them, and pick 5 to start with, or 3, and date those instead of handing him 50 things and make him curl up in a ball and want to just go away. So you date them, you talk about when they're going to be done, the date and time. I mean, you date and time everything. So here are the things that need to be fixed. Here are the errands that need to be run. Here are the regular things that need to be done. Garbage emptied on a certain. Here are the weekly things. Here are the daily things. Here are the monthly things. Here are the one-time things. Like the eaves on the house need to be fixed. Here's the door that needs to be rehung. That kind of thing. If he needs to look for a job, here are the number of job applications that need to be filled out and sent out by email each day, and then you need to see evidence that they were actually done. Then you're going to meet, every other day or whatever schedule is that you agree on, so that there's an accountability. Because right now what you have is nothing happening and resentment. Well, this isn't going to work. And so when you get together, you talk each day about what was agreed upon that was going to happen. Then what actually happened. Then you talk about why didn't it happen. And then what can you do to help him, and what can he do to help you for the assignments that didn't happen. It's a very practical, straightforward, clear communication. As opposed to just, well, you don't ever do anything. See, that just doesn't help anybody. And it just leads to everybody being irritated, and it just leads to bitterness. So we're looking at what leads to success, what leads to love, and that's all that matters. So it's always about loving, because if you don't address loving first, then no task is going to be done successfully. He has to feel loved by you first. Next viewer says, I loaned a friend of mine my Real Love CDs, and she absolutely loved the first one, but she didn't agree with the second one. So throw away the second one. If you get a chance, will you please read her feedback? I don't quite know how to answer her. So here's her comment. She says, quote, I don't believe that anger in and of itself is wrong. I believe that what you do with it could be wrong, and usually is, but not always. So there's a lot of caveats here. Sounds like a legal document. I don't believe the absence of $1 million, to quote the CD, is the true cause or repair of anger, or even the emptiness of a love account. I believe that there is evil in this world that provokes a righteous anger. Even evil must be overcome, and anger is a spurring on component. But I do believe it is imperative that one must come to a place of absolute forgiveness to all parties, including one's own self. We must not carry the anger, for it will devour us if we do. It is a poison that must be eliminated. but it is also a necessary response to some situations. I believe that consequences and punishment is an appropriate outcome of anger. It's important that the punishment is not carried out in anger, yet the anger or outrage of innocent peoples and consequences to heinous evil is a deterrent to future evildoers. Well, that's about the sum of it. Like I said, I thoroughly enjoyed the first CD. Perhaps I'm not understanding the second one yet. So, everything you say is very understandable and insightful. So let's go over it. Because I can promise you that if you have these questions, many others have them too. What's remarkable is your attitude, because what you're doing here is asking questions rather than just simply arguing, which many people do. When we come from a place of arguing, we're not really looking to learn anything. And this is delightful. First, you said you don't really believe that anger is wrong. Well, of course you don't, which is understandable. In the first place, almost everybody, let's see, 999 out of 1,000 people or more, does it. Almost everybody gets angry. So how could it possibly be wrong? Everybody does it, so it must be okay. And especially our parents did it. And so if we saw anger from birth on, how could something that everybody does be angry? Okay? So it makes sense that you would believe that anger is not wrong. Second, it works. When we get angry, people actually move faster. Things get done, at least in the short term. So again, how could anger possibly be wrong? Third, we don't want to believe that anger is wrong primarily because it's something we do. If it's something we use every day, we're going to be very reluctant to believe that what we do is wrong. So I really get that you'd be slow to believe that anger is wrong. Now, what do I mean by anger being wrong? Because I talk about that in that accursed second CD. What I mean by wrong, I'm not talking here about, evil. We're going to send you to hell if you're angry. What I mean is that we're here, our highest purpose in life. And my goodness, this has been taught by pretty much every thinker from the beginning of time. Is our highest purpose in life is to be happy. And anything then that would interfere with our highest purpose in life would therefore be wrong. Simple as that. What makes us happy? Feeling loved makes us happy. Being loving makes us happy. Anything then that contributes to our feeling loved, being loving, and being happy would therefore be right. Simple. It makes ethics so easy. Just as obviously anything that detracts or interferes with our feeling loved, being loving, being happy would therefore be wrong. Wrong in the sense that 2 + 2 = 5 is wrong. It's not evil. It's just wrong. It doesn't work. If you get a flat tire, replacing it with the kitchen sink is wrong. It's stupid. It doesn't work. In that way, anger never contributes to our being happy. It is never the highest solution. No matter what we want to get done, when we get angry, we're never happy. And so, in that sense, anger is always wrong. As in, it is not the most effective choice. It detracts from our whole purpose in being here. Now, it's very seductive to believe that sometimes we need anger, that sometimes that is like the thing that will get things done. So, for example, let's see, I wrote down a couple of examples here. That anger must be used to accomplish a thing. For example, like, if people are treated unjustly, then we must rise up in our anger to smite them down. But, history has proven that this doesn't work. That in the long run, anger simply begets more anger and more destruction. And I'm going to get to this in just a second. Actually, let's get to it now. Actually, you kind of intuitively already know this. You said that anger must sometimes be used to accomplish a thing, but then we must not carry it because it will devour us. So you can see that it is harmful. You said, for example, we shouldn't carry it too long. You said, quote, it is a poison that must be eliminated. So it's kind of obvious then that the shorter the time we carry it, the better. Yes? So let's do the math. The shorter, the better. So what is the shortest possible time? 0. So in other words, anger is always wrong. The shortest possible time is 0. The best possible time that we could use anger is none at all. The problem is this. We believe that when injustice exists, we need to use anger to rise up and squelch the injustice. But the minute we do that, we've grabbed a tool that will destroy us. Now, the seduction is that when we use anger, does it sometimes accomplish what appear to be good things? Yes, you're right. So, if a man, for example, is beating a child, and I rise up in my righteous indignation, in my anger, and I grab a bat and I hit the man and I stop him from beating the child. In stopping the man from beating the child, have I done a good thing? Yes. But in my anger, I have lost my own happiness. And here's the point. Is it possible to stop the man from beating the child without being angry? Yes, it is. I can run over. There are many possibilities. I can speak to him. I've done this, by the way. So this isn't theoretical. People say, oh, you can't go over to a man who's beating a child and stop him just by speaking a kind word. Look at me. Yes, you can. Because I've done this in many circumstances where people have been violently angry, walked over to them, simply reached out and touched them with my hand with no fear in me, and they've just melted and stopped. It's very disarming to them to have somebody do that because they've never seen it. Love is so disarming to people who've never seen it that it will very often simply stop them. That's what Gandhi did in India. Here were the Brits, here were 10,000 Brits occupying a country of 300 million people. And they did it with force of arms and a lot of other things. And Gandhi said, we're not going to do this anymore. And we're not going to throw the Brits out with, I think maybe it was 100,000 Brits. No, it was 10,000. And he said, we're not going to do this with force of arms. He said, we're going to do this with the force of truth. Or another translation of the word that he used, which was in the Hindu language, satyagraha. He said, we're going to do this with truth force, or another translation of it was love force. We're going to do it with the force of truth and loving. In fact, he made mistakes early on, but he eventually wouldn't allow anybody to participate in his marches or in his organization unless they could do it with love in their heart and no anger toward the British. If they had anger, he wouldn't allow them to participate in his cause because it generated more hate from the British, and it destroyed what they were trying to accomplish. So, can we accomplish the same thing without anger? Yes. In fact, in many cases, we can accomplish it better and faster. Now, sometimes, as in the case of, say we get a Hitler or a whatever, when they simply line up their tanks and march into your country. If you were to stand in front of the tanks with Hitler and wave flowers, would Hitler have been impressed by that? No. So in some cases, you may even have to use tanks yourself. You may have to kill the enemy. You may have to do that. But you still don't have to do it with anger. So it's a very seductive thing to say that you have to meet evil with anger, but it is a lie. Now, why do we believe it? Because we haven't seen anger met with love. We haven't seen it. And if you've never seen it, then you tend to believe that anger has to be used. And I'm here to tell you from profound and extensive experience that it is a lie. That love is more effective. And I'm not making fun of people who believe that anger has to be used. It's only from inexperience that they believe that, because they just haven't seen it used enough in real life. But it really works. Now, sometimes anger really does look better in the short term. People will say, well, anger looks better, for example, than rolling over and being beaten. And, I get that it does in the very short term. But if once you pick anger up, it's like picking up a gun. Now you have to deal with all the consequences of using it. And in the long term, he who lives by the sword dies by the sword. It's that old saying. He who lives by anger will find that it will kill him. Here's a viewer who says, you know that my mom is a classic victim, and I've never felt particularly loved by her. Well, of course you haven't. Victims are concerned only about themselves. Look what you did to me. Look what you should have done for me. It's not my fault. Victims just walk around grumbling, me, 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 me. Or occasionally they will say you, but then it's only about look what you did to who? Me. Then you continue. When wise people tell me she's loving you the best she can, I really resist. I want to say, come on, that's a bunch of blank, blank, blank. I can accept that she's doing what she knows. If you compared her to an Alzheimer's patient or someone with a mental disability, then I could agree that she might be doing the best she can. But it's hard for me, recognizing her as a capable adult with choices, to conclude that she's doing the best she can. So what you're saying is, you could accept it if she had a physical or mental disability. But you have a very hard time accepting her as having an emotional or a spiritual disability. You can't see her disability. And so, you have a hard time with that. And that's a bit limited on your part. You continue. When I thought about my kids getting older and looking back at my parenting, I thought, I would like for them to say she was doing the best she could. Then I realized that in doing that, I'm wanting them to accept and love me, which is not their job. Now, the two acts are unrelated. It is your responsibility to, and I don't mean overnight, but it's your mission in life to learn to see your mother clearly and accept her. Why? Because it's just the true and loving thing to do. It is simply the truth that she is emotionally and spiritually crippled. That's just the truth. And so that's your job to learn to see the truth. And the other reason that it's your job is because as you learn to accept and love her, you will become happier. That's why. Not just because, it's more positive, you need to think more positively. No, it's just more true and it's more loving. Whether your children do the same with you is their choice and their journey in life. And the two choices are unrelated. Your children's job and responsibility to learn to accept and love you is unrelated to your choice to learn to accept and love your mother. Unrelated events. Then you continue. You say, one real love coach said that I'm stuck on being right about my mother and not wanting to forgive her. I've had trouble forgiving. I've been working at not seeing her as this big victim monster, like Jabba the Victim Hutt. That's quite an image. This makes things easier. What's your take on the fact that she's loving me the best that she can? So it is important to recognize that she hurt you as a child, probably still is as an adult, and she hurt you badly. There's no denying that. There's no minimizing that. But now you want her to suffer for that. You really want her to experience some pain. And you want her to admit it to you. You want her to tell the truth about it. You want her to pay for her crime. You want to flog her in the public square because of the mistakes that she made. But see, she's incapable of seeing her crime. And she's incapable of paying for it. Neither of those things is probably ever going to happen. Well, certainly the paying for it, that isn't going to happen. But she's also probably incapable of ever really fully admitting what she's done. Now here's the irony. She did not know what she was doing. She was an emotional and spiritual cripple. And you want to take this cripple and you want to beat her for what she did. So the irony is, who's the truly cruel person here? So what an ironic thing. And I'm not making fun of you. So of the two of you, who has the more knowledge of what's really going on here? You do. So if anybody's going to change here, it's really only going to be you. And you're going to have to learn to completely accept and love and forgive her without her changing one bit, without her acknowledging her mistakes, without her seeing them, without her paying for them, without her doing anything. And pretty much that's the definition of unconditional, isn't it? Is you're being able to do all that. Here's somebody who, here's a viewer tonight, actually, who says, I've been dating somebody for a couple of months and initially thought he was able to tell the truth about himself and love unconditionally. I've spoken to him about how important it is for me to have a relationship with a man who wants to practice learning how to be unconditionally loving with me. He seemed interested in the beginning. He even bought the book, which, by the way, doesn't really mean very much. So far, we've got just words. Words alone, this is important to get. Words alone don't mean anything. So you have to keep observing behavior. So this has been a couple of months. He hasn't read much of the book up to this point, and slowly I've started to feel less connected to him and see how he very well may not know how to tell the truth about himself, but more so about everybody else. We've talked about this again just recently, and I'm starting to feel like this is all going in one ear and out the other. Well, see, if you've known somebody for 2 months and you've told them that this is an important subject to you, and they've just kind of read a little bit of the book, then they're telling you with their behavior, this isn't important to me. See? That's what they're telling you. So you just need to hear the answer. Obviously, I've had some expectations that since I'm expressing the importance of real love in my life and having a partner who's willing to engage in practicing the principles, that maybe he would consider learning with me, especially since he's shared with me that he's not interested in having a relationship just to have one, but rather is ready to work toward marriage and a future. Well, see, that's words. All this is fine and all, but I'm unsure whether I should move forward with this man when his actions and words have shown that he might not really know how to tell the truth about himself, looks to others to make him happy, and that he really might not be willing to practice real love with me. Should I give it more time or leave now? It is a possibility that you might give it one more explanation. But see, it's been 2 months. You might try one other thing. Sometimes people early on simply don't understand what truth-telling looks like. And so you might consider doing this. You might say, this is what I'm looking for in a relationship. But keep remembering that you're simply describing your partner. You're not trying to change him. So you say, I'm looking for a partner who is rabidly, crazily interested in truth-telling and in learning how to be unconditionally loving. And truth-telling would look like this. It would be telling the truth about, and you give him some examples. So you say, like for example, it would be saying, here are some examples of when I lie. Here are some examples of when I run. Here are some examples of when I've acted like a victim. You could actually give him some examples of when he has done those things. Give him some examples of when you have seen him do those things. And then you say, I'm not telling you that you should do that you should tell the truth. You say, I'm just giving you some examples of what it would look like. Then you also tell him, I'm not telling you you should be doing this with me. Then you also tell him, and when I say that I'm looking for a partner who's rabidly interested in unconditional love, then this would be a partner who, for example, would devour a book about real love in, a few days and would be just dying to talk to me about these principles. Because these are the principles that give life to us. These are the principles that make life worth living. I don't care if you use the terms in the book. Who cares? But these are the kind of things that we would want to sit around and just nurture each other with. And so you say to him, that is what it would look like. And so far, your interest has been, 10% of that. And so I'm just telling you that what I'm seeing is a huge disparity between the interest you've expressed and the interest you've demonstrated. Then what you do is you observe him over the next 7 days. And if you don't see an explosion of activity that then persists, and continues, you're done. Because you're not trying to make him your partner. It's a constant job interview everywhere you go. You're simply setting the standards for what you want in a partner, and then every guy that comes along either fits that description or he don't. Otherwise, you're wasting your time. You don't keep trying to make pigs sing. You don't keep trying to make chickens into chimpanzees. You don't keep trying to make people into what they ain't. It is endlessly frustrating to do that. So have in your mind what a really loving, vibrant, fun, exhilarating, truthful, loving relationship looks like. Then you're looking for a guy who comes along and goes, wow, that's what I want to do, and then does it. Not who says, wow, that's what I want to do, and then just keeps going, that's what I want to do. That's what I want to do. We can get a Chatty Cathy doll programmed who can say that. So the words by themselves they just don't mean very much. You just want to observe. And then after another week, if he's not continuing to explode in interest, you go, hey, it's been really fun being with you. I really like you as a person, and this just doesn't work. This doesn't fit. And you let him go faster. There have been studies done in the workplace that have demonstrated that where the best CEOs have said that one of the most important lessons that they've learned in dealing with employees is you set a standard for what you want the employee to be, and what they've learned is to let employees go sooner. Instead of trying to make people into what they're not, they say, this is what we need for an employee. And when an employee doesn't fit the job, instead of continuing to pound the employee and say, well, keep trying to be taller. But be taller. See how stupid that is? Then what they say to the employee is, we made a mistake. You don't fit the job description. Goodbye. Same thing with a partner. You don't fit the description. See you. And then it's over. And then you wait for the next one to come along. It's a hoot. Words meaningless. Here's a question from a viewer tonight. My husband wants me to tell our almost 13-year-old son to go buy him a birthday present. So he gets out of himself and does something for someone else. You need to have your husband watch this video chat. I'm concerned about the message that sends to my son about having to buy a gift, no matter what, and also dealing with my husband's demand. He says, forgive me, this is just too funny. He says it's not an option to have my son buy a present. I'm not sure what to say to my son. By the way, my husband's birthday was more than a week ago. All right, so look at the message that this is going to teach the son. All right, so it's your husband's birthday, and what is the entire message of a birthday present? What is it? Let's think about, and so now you don't have to do this. So we're going to let the video chat be the message to your husband. Although I suppose you could relay the message, but the entire message of a birthday present is to say, I care about you. Yes? What other reasonable message could there be? So now what we're going to do is, I'll be you. So I'm going to go to your son and I'm going to say, son, you need to be more loving. We have observed that you need to get out of yourself and do more things for other people. So the way that we've chosen for you to do this is, you have no choice about this. It is not an option, to use your words. We are going to force you, we're going to make you go and buy a birthday present for your father. Kind of like force you as one would force a slave. Since you have no choice, in this instance, you really are a slave. Because having no choice makes you one. A slave or a servant, pick the term that you like. And so we're going to make you buy a present for your father, and from this you are going to learn a feeling of love and caring for your father. Now you have no choice, but as you buy the present, what we want you to get out of this is a feeling of concern and compassion and sweetness. Does anybody get how crazy this is, and how this is going to utterly fail for this child? It's not going to work. Just in the same way that when we say to little kids, we hand a kid an ice cream cone, and we say to the kid, now, to whoever hands the cone to the kid, we say, now what do you say? What do you say? And we make the child say thank you to the adult. Now, sometimes I've said to the adult, why do you make the child say thank you? And they say, to teach the child gratitude. And I say, all right, so do a little experiment with me. When you say, now what do you say to the child? I want you to look at the child's face when he says, thank you. I want you to look at the child's face in that moment and tell me, does he look grateful when he says, thank you? Does he look grateful? Or when you say to your son, you have to buy your father a birthday present, in that moment, do you think he's going to feel loving? No. No, true gratitude is an expression of joy, selflessness. And so should be the giving of a present. So how are you going to teach this child to, like you said here, get out of himself and do something for somebody else and be loving? How do you think he's going to learn that? He's going to learn that by watching you, by following your example. And so that means that you and your husband will have to do more to be more unconditionally loving toward who? Him. And I would suggest that you learn more about unconditional love by reading the parenting book yourselves, read the Real Love book yourselves, and then read the Real Love and Parenting book with him. And as you do that, you will teach him what true unconditional loving looks like. And there's a whole chapter in the Real Love and Parenting book that will teach you how to teach him how to be unconditionally loving toward other people. That's the way you teach a child to be loving. First, to be an example yourself, and then there are lessons in there about the advantages to being loving, how it helps us to be happier, how it helps us to be more vibrant and alive and just more complete people to be loving. Whereas if we teach them to do things for other people because they have to, then what they learn is obligation. Then they learn resentment. When we teach them to say thank you to other people because they have to, all again they learn is duty and obligation. They don't learn one thing about true gratitude. So read the parenting book with him. Be more loving with him. And man, life gets to be just a hoot. And have fun with the kid. Man, then he'll learn what real loving is all about. So, what we're going to do is we're going to get together again in a week, and I'll see you all next Tuesday. And between now and then, remember, it's always about real love. And I look forward to seeing you then. Thanks.